You are 3 years old. You wake up and no one is watching you. No one is counting how many words you know. No one has scheduled your morning, packed your bag, or measured you against the child sleeping next to you. You just wake up and you walk out into the world. For 99% of human history, this was childhood. No bedtime charts, no screen limits, no developmental milestones taped to a wall. No parenting books because there were no parents in the way you mean the word. So how did it work? How did your ancestors raise children for hundreds of thousands of years with none of the rules we now believe are essential? And why do so many of those children grow up calmer, more independent, and more secure than the ones we raise today? Let's start with the first thing that would shock a modern parent. Your ancestors did not raise their children alone. In the world, a child usually has one or two primary caregivers: a mother, maybe a father. The whole weight of that small human rests on one or two pairs of shoulders. But that arrangement is strange, it is new, and by the standards of human history, it is almost an accident. Anthropologist Sarah Blaffer-Hrdy spent decades studying how humans actually reproduce and rear their young. In her book Mothers and Others, she argued that humans are what biologists call cooperative breeders. That means the young are raised not by a single mother but by a whole web of caregivers. Grandmothers, aunts, older siblings, unrelated adults in the band. Hrdy gave these helpers a name: alloparents. The prefix allo simply means other mothers, other fathers. Among the foragers of the Congo, researchers found that a newborn might be passed between different caregivers dozens of times in a single day, held by as many as 14 different people before it was even a few weeks old. The baby was almost never alone, but it was also almost never the sole responsibility of just one exhausted person. Think about what that does. The mother gets to rest, to forage, to be a person and not only a caregiver, and the child learns something in its bones from the very beginning. The world is full of people who will hold you. You are safe. You belong to many. Now consider the father. In your world, an involved father is praised as unusual, even heroic, but anthropologist Barry Hewlett lived among the aka foragers of Central Africa, and what he documented broke every assumption. Aka fathers, he found, hold or stay within arm's reach of their infants roughly half of every day. They will offer a nipple to a fussing baby to comfort it. They sleep with the child in their arms. Hewlett called aka fathers the most involved fathers ever systematically observed, not because someone told them to be, because that was simply how their world worked. So the first rule of ancient childhood is that there were no single parents drowning alone. There was a village, and the word was literal. Here is the second thing that would unsettle you. Your ancestors barely taught their children anything. In your world, teaching is constant. You correct, you instruct, you narrate, you quiz. But in most foraging societies, direct instruction is rare. Anthropologist David Lancy, who wrote The Anthropology of Childhood after surveying societies across the globe, found that in many cultures, adults do not see it as their job to teach children at all. Children are expected to learn by watching, by copying, and by playing at the tasks of adults until the play quietly becomes the real thing. A small child in a foraging band is given a real knife. Not a plastic toy, a real one, and the adults do not hover. Anthropologists working with the AKA and other groups have described toddlers handling sharp blades and sitting near open fires while adults watch calmly, intervening only when truly necessary. The reasoning is simple and hard for us to accept. A child who learns the edge of a knife early under gentle observation learns respect for it in a way that lasts. The children learn the way children have always learned best, through play. Psychologist Peter Gray, who studies play across cultures, points out that hunter-gatherer children played almost constantly, and that this play was not a break from learning, it was the learning. They played at hunting, at gathering, at building, at caring for younger children. They mixed ages freely. So a 4-year-old learned not from an adult, but from a 7-year-old, who learned from a 10-year-old. The whole playgroup was a school with no teacher and no walls. Let's reconstruct a day. You are 5. You wake, when your body wakes, in a shelter surrounded by relatives and near relatives. There is no morning routine because there is no morning schedule. You drift toward the other children. Some are your age, some are much older, some are barely walking. No adult organizes you. You spend the day roaming the edges of camp, digging, climbing, imitating the older ones as they mimic the hunt. When you are hungry, you eat what is shared. When you are tired, you rest against whoever is nearest. When you are afraid, a dozen adults are within calling distance, and any one of them will comfort you. No one praises you for a task well done, and no one shames you for failing. You simply grow, held inside a group that assumes you will become capable because every child before you did. Now, here is the counterintuitive twist, and it is a big one. We tend to assume that all these rules we have invented, the schedules and the milestones and the constant supervision, make children more secure. That structure equals safety, but some researchers argue the opposite may be true. The anthropologist Melvin Connor, who spent years studying infancy among the Jew hoansi people of the Kalahari, once known as the Kung, documented something striking. Jew hoansi infants were held or kept in close physical contact for most of the day and night. They were nursed frequently, on demand in short bursts, sometimes dozens of times an hour. They rarely cried for long because a response came almost instantly, and they were given, from a young age, a startling amount of freedom to explore. That combination sounds contradictory to us, total closeness and total freedom, but it may be exactly the combination human children evolved to expect. Constant contact in infancy builds a bedrock of security. And once that security is set, the freedom to roam builds independence on top of it. You are held completely, and then you are trusted completely. Contrast that with a modern paradox. We often hold our infants less, wheeling them in strollers and laying them in separate rooms, and then supervise our older children more, tracking their every movement and scheduling their every hour. Some researchers, including Connor, have wondered aloud whether we may have this exactly backward, whether we withhold closeness when children most need it, and withhold freedom when they most need that instead. There is more. The anthropologist Nikhil Shodhari and his colleagues studied childcare among the BaYaka foragers and found that infants received attentive care from an average of many different caregivers, and that when a child cried, a response typically came within seconds. They suggested that this dense net of responsive care may be part of why serious behavioral and emotional problems appear to be rarer in such societies. Not because those people had better rules, because they had almost no rules at all, only a way of living that surrounded every child with responsive, unhurried attention. And yet, we should be honest, this was not a paradise. Foraging childhood was shadowed by dangers we have escaped. Many children did not survive their first years. Illness, injury, and hunger were real. The intimacy of that world came bound to its harshness. When anthropologists praise the security of a Jew hoansi childhood, they are not asking you to return to it. They are asking you to notice what we lost when we left it behind, and to ask whether some of it can be recovered without the danger. So what does this ancient way of raising children reflect back at you now? You live in a world that tells you good parenting means more. More supervision, more instruction, more enrichment, more rules, more anxiety carried alone, and your ancestors, across hundreds of thousands of years, quietly did the opposite. They raised children with fewer rules, more hands, more freedom, and more trust. They did not carry the weight alone, and they did not believe a child had to be constantly taught in order to learn. You are 3 years old. You wake up and no one is watching you. But now you understand why. It was not neglect. It was the deepest kind of confidence. A whole world holding you loosely, certain you would find your way. Because you were never truly alone to begin with.